Put me on there twice.
Okay. John, Rick, you good?
Yeah, good.
Oh, all right. Welcome everybody to the final meeting, the 2025 Charter Revision Commission. We'll call it to order at 6:33. We have every member here in person tonight. Jim Clark, Joe Bennett.
It's amazing.
Carl Dickens, Tyler Fairbairn, Doug Hempstead.
Exactly.
Rick McQuaid, John Levin, Tanya Rhodes Small, Ed Camacho at the end. We have public participation. We have nobody here with us in person. We have one person online. Diane, if you would like to participate, could you raise your Zoom hand and we'll get you set up here. Otherwise, we'll proceed. So our discussion this evening is the topics that came up at the public hearing. We had 10 people, covered a couple different topics. I think we could probably aggregate a lot of them. I think some of them were the same issue. Steve, may I borrow your printed copy of this on my phone? So we heard for the list, we heard from the need for minority party representation, support for maintaining a mandatory charter revision every 5 years rather than 10. We have recommended changing it to 10. Further support for NPR, we heard from a gentleman who wanted to help make the charter more accessible to residents through summaries, visual charts, graphics. We were asked to consider expanding the authority of the Common Council pertaining to the operating budget and line item control, increasing the size of the Common Council to 5 reps per district, electing the BET, imposing term limits, which is something we have discussed since the last charter revision. That's not going to be on the table. Increasing the terms for mayor and common council to 4 years. An assistant city clerk serving the common council versus the mayor's office. We heard support for 5 NPR at large. Further support for NPR, up to 3 common council members per district. We heard additional support for a 4-year mayoral term and common council term. We heard further support for line item budgetary approval and oversight by the common council. And one more in support of NPR with support for the referendum reform that we'd already approved. So I think we can start with the one that came up the most often, just minority party representation. Doug, did you have something?
Well, I think we left the meeting with an open-ended question on Mason's rules to be able on reconsideration vote. That's the way we left it.
We did, but I
don't think we have to worry about that because NPR was brought up at the public hearing. It's properly before.
Okay, no, I'm just.
Yeah, so we have one. Okay, Diane does have her hand. If we can call Diane for the public speaking portion. Diane, we'll give you your 3 minutes. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Tyler. The robot would not let my hand raise, so I appreciate you taking me a moment later after you finish your sentence. Okay, thank you. For the record, my name is Diane Lauricella, 21 Little Fox Lane, very interested in the process of government and how government functions and should function. So I know that you are weighing in at the end of this effort. I appreciate all of you and all the discussion. At times, I wish there was time for more discussion. But I just wanted to lift up and elevate something that I don't get a sense will be discussed and put to the vote for the election this coming fall. Number one, it is the increase of the amount of council members. I do think it would help to function, for our government to function better, to allow, and we the people would be able to realize and demand better due diligence on the part of the council. because right now many council members are assigned 3 to 4 different committees. And some folks have said, I just don't have time to do my own separate discussion. And I truly believe that is something that I find uninspiring, but the thing is, by having extra number of council, it would have to be an odd number, either increase the 5 at large or increase 1 each of the district. I don't think it's a sweet spot. Someone has said, oh, 15 is sweet. Well, Stamford is too many, and I believe we have too few. So I wish you had really spent more time on that. Number 2, I do think minority representation is something that needs to be addressed because we are an outlier. And again, there's something to be said for running better campaigns so that you win, more campaigns of substance, not just complaining, but finding solutions. But beyond that, I still think we should look at it and let the public decide. Lastly, I'm very sad about the lack of any wording about in boards and commissions about some gender parity related to the census tract of the year to year. There is currently, I know some of you might be in a state of disbelief, but there is gender inequity on many of our boards and commissions. I don't think the city and this administration and previous administrations have done enough to make sure that we reach out so that we have gender parity. And while it could be also seen as an ordinance or a policy, I would love it to be memorialized in the charter because we never know
30
who.
seconds remaining.
Thank you. We never know who will be elected, and in the majority and also in the big house, in the mayor's office. So thank you for allowing me to speak. I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, so Doug, back to the question you had, I believe that that's resolved itself because it came up as one of the public hearing issues
got
that
that.
we had to talk about, so we haven't taken up any. I don't
It's
know.
just the way we left it.
Absolutely, so I think that was, I think because it came up, Steve didn't need to look into it further because it's gonna come up again
I
tonight.
don't think you got a copy of it.
Oh, no, I do. It's on my desk.
You think we had some plants there?
I did.
It was too heavy to carry here tonight.
Yeah.
That's chair.
The binding was coming off.
I mean, and I don't, Steve, I just, to that end, I don't know that we need to even have the untabling discussion, right? It's just, we
Okay.
can discuss it as a new issue. And
It's before you, the public.
it's
raised
before
it.
us, the public.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, we're not gonna hold the public to parliamentary procedural rules.
and we can discuss it. I think that's perhaps a good place to start. My position on it has not changed, which is that I am not in support of it. I was looking back at some recent Norwalk election breakdowns, and obviously since 2017, where we had 5 at large and 9 district Democrats and 1 non. If you go a couple election cycles before that, in 2015, you had 2 at-large Democrats and 8 in-district Democrats, 3 at-large Republicans, 2 district Republicans. In 2013, you had 1 at-large Democrat, 6 district Democrats, 4 at-large Republicans, 4 district Republicans with a Democratic mayor. In 2011, 2 at-large Democrats, 7 district Democrats, 3 at-large Republicans, 3 district Republicans, and a Republican mayor. So I think we can look at this, most of us, and say, what happened between 2015 and 2017 that might have had an impact on the way things are now? And I don't think it's any secret that there was a national election with an incredibly divisive figure in this part of the country and in this part of the state, and there was a reaction to that. And I think that that's happened not just in Connecticut, not just in Norwalk, but kind of throughout New England. I think we just have seen a reaction to what has happened there. So, in my time in Norwalk, which is only since 2014, you've had non-Democrats. And I think it'll return to that. I think you don't need to make any changes to accommodate 2 token seats that could very easily be won by the right candidates. So I'm happy to hear arguments otherwise. We've obviously discussed and the one of the three models that we decided not to vote for. The one that was proposed at our last meeting prior to the public hearing was to have 2 of the 5 at-large common council seats be for the minority party. So, Doug, floor is yours.
My counterpoint,
Please.
let's go back to the end of 2000, Bush versus Gore, right? Very close, contested election, I went to the Supreme Court to get it decided. Mayor election 2001, Alex Knopf won with 15-0 Democrat council and a 9-0 Board of Education. The following 2 years later, under Alex Knopf, there were 2 individuals who happened to be sitting one together, got elected from the Republican Party, different districts, one each and split districts. And the rest was, and I don't think anything at that point changed on the Board of Ed. Not sure, because there was a 4-year term, and I think that's the way they were locked in. So I debate, I challenge using lock, it just depends on who's running for president at the time. I get it, trust me, I get it,
Unique.
I understand it very well.
Unique
But in the same token, since and let's see, my last year was 2019, I think, right? So it was 17, 19, right? I remember, I've lost track of some of the years now, it's been that long. That I was the lone Republican elected in 17 and finished up the third of 19, and it was a single.
That was you? You were the one?
I was the one, I was the first one, I used to kid everybody, I sat out in the car, looked at the mirror,
jumped ship.
and myself, and then after that was Tom. He was the only Republican elected. The year after that, he was reelected.
Yeah.
And then after that, we have nobody. Heather Dunn is qualified as minority, party minority representation, but you'd have to go back and look at 20 years now and say, okay, there's at least 1, 2, 5, so at least 5, 10 years, if not 12 years, that there was either 1 or 2 people at best that represented it. I get back to the intention that the state allowed this kind of city to adopt like this. Again, I'm gonna say we're one of only 2 cities that don't do this. Whether that's all practiced in good faith throughout the state, I think when we listen to certain communities, some do it in the right spirit and some don't.
Sure. I
have difficulty at Camacho brought up a couple meetings. I struggle with that other fact. Hey, you win, you lose, you lose. I've been on both sides of that equation, so I get it. But at some point, if the trend is definitely heading one way, and it seems to have been, because it's been consistent over the last 4 years, even when there was a different president in office. 4 years, that maybe it's time the city to say, you know what, this can go another way, the other way, and would this be fair? It was never brought up before that I can recall. I don't remember even when the council was a split at one point, but the majority was a Republican independent. But the minority, we were a minority party, we caucused separately, we didn't caucus with everybody else. But the Democratic Party at least minimally always had at least 2 people elected. So nobody has ever brought it up in the past, so I'd like to bring it to the table again. I know the first one failed, but I think that one was I think the longer term option, we gotta look at the amount of council people that the city should really have. I agree with Diana Arcello, the problem is the council over the last charter revision, and then with the department head changes a few years back, actually put more on their plate. All right, there are more appointments they have to do, but didn't add more people to help make that decision. So that's something I would like to be able to pass on to the, back to the council, is that that's really one long-term issue you need to address. But right now, I'd like to, if I can, make a motion so we can discuss the motion. What I was trying to bring off the table, which is the only one I was gonna approach, was a 5 at-large candidate, that 2 at-large candidates be minority representation.
Yeah, that's, and apologies, I thought that was I was just gonna ask you if that was the version you were supporting.
Yes, because
Jim?
I think a number of people have mentioned, besides Diane Lorchell this evening, about having too much on the council members' plates. I don't recall if we had an option that would would have us have more representatives on the council. Or if all of the options were just the same number. Because if we had, one per district, that gives us then a chance to maybe have some minority representation with the additional members, so it would not really affect the standing number of common council members. We could get some representation and have a chance for minority representation. Did we discuss that type of option? Yeah.
So the three that we considered when we initially discussed MPR earlier in the process was I believe the first option was the one that's being considered now, right? The 5 at large, 2 of which would be MPR, same number, 15 councilors. We had voted no on option 2, which was the Waterbury model, which would have been to have 10 and 5. And then the third version, that was the one, the second one, I believe, was the 3 councilors from, you eliminate the at large. You'd have 3 council members from each of the 5 districts, only 2 of whom in each district could be from the same party. And then the third option was you would have 15 districts.
Okay,
And you
so
would elect-
none of them were.
None of them involve expanding the size of the council, but I think that would be a separate discussion.
Yes, so that's thinking about reviewing what we had put on the table before. I think an option that might appeal to me is what I just mentioned, expanding one council person per district. And then we could discuss and debate how we wanted to have that. Want to use that as for NPR, but that would be up for discussion.
You would add 1 district seat in each and keep the 5 at large, so you'd expand to 20.
Yeah, so we would add 5. We now have.
We have 15.
Yes,
So we have
15.
You have
five. So
10 in district, 5 at large.
So-
15 districts.
So we would add 1 per district, and then I'm up for discussion about how, the group would feel that this would best work in governance. But it would give us an opportunity to discuss NPR, even if it's just with those 5.
So when you say 1 per district, that means that in those districts that have been traditionally a Democratic, you would have 2 Democrats, 1 Republican in those districts that have been traditionally Democratic. And in the district that has been traditionally split, District D, you would have potentially 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat in that district.
I'm not
No,
specifying,
no,
I'm not
that's a different
specifying
thought.
any breakdown of Republicans or Democrats in what I'm saying now. I'm just saying, if we added 5 more, if we agreed that would lighten the load of each individual council person, then we could, if we agreed to that, then we could then begin a discussion of how we want to.
So you're saying, but if you're adding 5, are you putting any limits on, is that?
On the party representation.
Is the party representation on those new 5?
What I'm suggesting is first we agree that would 5 be helpful, and then we have a discussion about how we want to deal with that. Because I don't feel I necessarily have enough experience on the council, which I don't have. The ET, I don't have enough, you collectively in this room, there's a lot more experience to have, opinions about what would be the best way to have an expanded council and make it effective in governance for the city of Norwalk.
My thinking on this issue hasn't changed either. It's, it's especially galling to me that, and I'm not singling out any person on this commission, but that a party that is so opposed to diversity and inclusion based on characteristics that people can't change, their sex, their gender, their sexual identity, that is not sufficient for people to think that to be okay with diversity and inclusion on that basis, but on the basis of characteristics that actually can change. The Republican Party can decide that it wants to govern, that it believes in government. Individual people within the Republican Party can decide that the government can be an agent for good. So being Republican is not an immutable characteristic, the way that sex and sexual and race et cetera, is. And so a party that doesn't, that is insisting on diversity and inclusion for political purposes, but is hell-bent on thinking that diversity and inclusion of people that can't change who they are and what they are is particularly upsetting to me. Beyond that, it is really quintessentially anti-democratic. We now live in a nation where half of the population, probably more than half, has no say at all in government, including the Senate and the Congress. And if we continue to elect people that don't believe in government, we're going to end up with a situation where we cannot and do not govern ourselves. And I think that the Republican Party locally can begin this conversation of, yes, we believe in government. We believe that we can govern ourselves. And then go about the business of doing that, rather than suggest that even though the people don't elect us, that because we don't believe in government, that we need a seat at the table so that we can undo the very thing that we have been elected to do, which is to govern. And so I think once the Republican Party understands and appreciates that, at least in the Northeast, people want to govern themselves. And that's what a government is about. And that's what elections are about. Once the Republican Party locally understands that, they will bring in younger people into the party. They will bring in people that want to govern, that want to basically do what the machinery of a government is meant to do. We actually had one Republican member when I was on the city council, the only Republican member on the city council. He voted no for every single thing that came up. No for everything. And if that's the face of the Republican Party, and that was the face of the Republican Party in that city council, you're not going to get a seat at the table because you don't, because you aren't serious about this thing. And so it's going to be a race toward mediocrity once we begin to give out seats to people that the public have not deigned to give the majority of the votes to. And so I oppose this quite vigorously for all those reasons.
You oppose adding members to the council?
Oh,
Before you right now is NPR, not.
Yeah, this
Yes,
is,
we'll
yeah, let's keep.
we'll finish NPR and then.
But as an aside, I do agree.
So I have a question. And I appreciate Commissioner Camacho's comments. I don't agree with 100% of them, but I appreciate the comments because in some ways I feel similar to you. What I want to be really clear on, and I haven't been since this started on this discussion, what's the problem we're trying to solve? Is it more council people, more representation because the community is growing? Or what is it now, almost 100,000 people? I know from personal experience, and I know, I'm pretty sure that Doug would back up on this, as Ed would as well, but I believe that if you sit on council, you're required to be at X number of committee meetings that you get assigned, correct? If you are lone representation, no matter what party you belong to, you're gonna have to go to every one of those meetings. And I know that when there has just been a lone representative of the Rs, I don't know what it was like back in the day when the Rs were controlled. That's a lot of work. And I know one council person, not the one you're referring to, but I know one prior, that was out every single night to different committee meetings.
And that would have been you.
No, I actually lost my bid by a few hundred votes, but
Okay.
the gentleman that won Councilman Keegan was out a lot. And I helped him as much as I could, but I mean, that was load bearing. So from that standpoint, if I break these apart in my own mind, there needs to be, I believe, more council people to cover the problems that are brought before a particular council person. And with 100,000 people now, there's a lot of issues. And particularly, I think with a lot of people that are moving in, they bring different issues. Because they ask different questions. But I'm not clear on what the other problem is we're trying to solve. My feeling has been, maybe it's wrong, but always has been, if, as a Republican, I want to get people elected to office in the city of Norwalk, that is the party leadership, and party membership's job to get that done. That's not something that needs to be, I'll use the term, I don't know it's not the right one, legislative. Even though this is not a legislative document we're working on, but guidelines for ordinances and a way to do things. So, I mean, from that standpoint, I've never been clear what this really would solve being in the charter.
I actually agree with Commissioner Jim when he stated adding another person from each district. That also gives space and opportunity for the other party to get members that people want to elect. I don't think it should be taken out of the voters' hands just to say that, okay, if there's only one Republican elected, they're gonna have a lot of work to do. What if the people in that district don't agree with what they agree with? So if the people in your district, now you have an additional person, if you have candidates that people want to vote for and agree or want to push the agenda that the people in that district want, then they will vote for them. As opposed to just planting someone and they're saying that they have to be there just because they're not blue.
Well, if I might add on to that, just the raw numbers are that by registration, the Democrats outnumber Republicans 2-1. So basically, you can get every Republican that's registered to the polls, they're gonna lose.
Well, that's not,
Well, in some-
Also, as an independent and more of millennials or whatever they want to call us, we don't always agree with everything on the Democratic Party. There's a lot of
understand.
things we don't agree with, and I don't always vote straight Democrat. So I also don't think it's fair to say that just because they're more registered Democrats, that Democrats are just gonna automatically win. We are of a generation where we make people earn our votes. And we don't like what you say and we don't like what you stand for, we're not gonna vote for you.
And I agree with it, and I think it's the Republican Party, in this case, if that's who we're talking about, or whomever, has to be aware of that and get that message out, at least particularly within this city.
I agree.
To get more people to want to vote for them.
and,
That,
but
that's all I'm saying.
just to your point, and I know that Rick wants to say something, to your point, I believe that it's almost always been, not entirely, but close to 2-1, Democrat to Republican. I think it's been that way for a very long time.
I
It's
think
the
up to
unaffiliated-
mid-80s, I think.
It's the unaffiliated vote that really makes the difference. in
That's
this.
true too. In fact, there's more of them now than there is
Yes,
ours.
that's
It's
exactly
about
right.
a 50
And so that,
50 split in Democrat and everybody else.
Yep.
yeah, so I think those are the people that vote. And let's face it, Harry, whether you like him or not, has been a successful mayor by most accounts. He's been reelected for, 6 terms. So, and it's not because he's a D, it's because he's viewed as apolitical in some ways. Some people think he's a Republican, or was a Republican before he ran for mayor as a Democrat. So there are a lot of things that go into why people vote for who they vote for. But in terms of the problem that we're seeking to fix, I think the problem, actually, one of the big problems is that there's way too much work for 15 people. And certainly if you're the lone Republican, there's much too much work for you. So I think that's a better solution to the problem.
So does increasing the size of council solve that problem?
I think so. I mean, it solves the work problem, the workload problem.
Where do you
Even
say
if it
the
doesn't solve
problem?
it, it should help it.
Well,
You
if
mean the
you,
NPR problem? Is that what you're talking
no,
about?
I'm
What problem? The
talking
workload.
more about work.
Work, well, it will certainly go.
And so Well, I'm gonna go to Rick and.
Yeah, I was just gonna, add a few points is, we're almost at 3-1 Democrat, Republican. But the biggest group out there is now the unaffiliated by far. And they're coming on strong. Another thing that we are keeping in mind too, is if you go back in the history of elections in Norwalk, we're more famous for voting people out than we are for voting people in. And at any given time, it is proven that, if you're a sitting mayor as a Democrat or you're sitting mayor as Republican, if people have had enough, it doesn't matter what the party makeups are, because we've still ended up with councils that have been 8-7 or 9-6. We've still ended up with those. So I think, that's just the nature of the beast right now, is that we're going through what we had done when I first became a council person, where Republicans were the power. And the Democrats, had 2 or possibly 3 or 4 council members. I think what's happened now is, also back then, it was a lot different than it is now, as far as councils working together as parties. And Doug will vouch for this, the mix of Republicans and Democrats didn't really matter back then. Now it seems to be, because there's D or an R and behind your name as you're running, that's what happens. And if you look at some of the votes, you can see exactly how that's going. And, I said, I think it was in the Lamont race last time. If you looked at Lamont's numbers and Stuart Wells' number, he was in the first column and Stuart in the very last column. There's only about 400 votes separating the two of them. I don't think most of those people knew Stuart Wells. I think that D just slipped because of what the nation was going through. So I think adding more members is a good idea for workload, but I don't think it's really going to, because if you still have 14 Democrats and 1 Republican or 1 independent, the workload is still going to be the same for that same one. So you don't come up with a good mix of how you make your council. It's not going to work no matter what we had or what representation we put in there. So I'm just going by the experience of having been on the council and also being a numbers guy in the last few elections and realizing that this is a trend that we've gone through before. When Republicans were riding high, and the nation has changed quite a bit, and that is one of the reasons why we are where we are right now. So that's what I hope.
Thanks, Rick.
I'm trying to figure out how to respond to some of this stuff, because some of it-
Take your time.
You don't have to respond.
yeah,
It's in the-
because we got off, we're supposedly a nonpartisan attempt at going after and changing parts of the city charter that we were asked to do, plus any thoughts that we had. Okay. Getting into politics and whether it's at the national level, local, I've been served over 4 different parts for 4 decades. I've seen it both sides of the aisle, act inappropriately, doing inappropriate things, saying inappropriate things. It swings both ways, so it's not a question, and I want to answer a question. In the case of District D, if the 2 Democrats got elected, Heather Dunn qualifies as a minority party. So it would not be a Republican plus an independent, it would be 2 Democrats, so that was the way it went, and 1 minority party. So, because it says minority party, it does not say Republican Party.
Sure.
We learned that from what they did up in Hartford.
Yep.
To answer your question, I brought up very early on the fact the city of Norwalk, compared to where it was 50 years ago, 40 years ago, was about 70,000 people for a long time, somewhere around 94. We added 25,000 people. I said, can we get any historical data? Because at one point there were 13 councilmen, it's not 15. And maybe go to 20. Part of the logistics of trying to figure out adding more districts, all right, versus more council people. I'd say that, then that would change the whole infrastructure for the Democratic Party, Republican Party, Independent Party. You know, and that got to be, nobody's gonna go for it. Now, but you bring up an interesting concept on top of it, because when we talked about was taking the five at large and moving them down into the districts and just having the district.
That was the option that.
Where
was
Jim
voted down.
says, let's just add a third candidate in each one of the districts.
It would be a similar model. You would just expand them, although Jim is not putting any party restrictions on his proposal. I think they are intertwined, obviously, but what
But-
Jim's discussing is a
No,
separate
I
topic.
understand that, I understand that, but
Yeah.
it was part of what I tried to bring up
I
in the
got it.
beginning.
Yeah.
So momentarily, I'd like to withdraw my motion.
Okay.
And see if Jim is interested in putting forth a motion that way, because it solves part of our problem.
Mhm.
Because it does solve a workflow problem, no matter what it is, so.
So is your suggestion?
I'm withdrawing mine
Sure.
right now.
But what I'm trying to clarify is with the proposal that Jim has made, right, expanding the size of the council by 5, by adding a member to each district, be agnostic to the party membership? Would that be a standalone thing and then we're
Yes.
done discussing MPR?
Yes,
Okay.
well. Anybody.
We don't,
anybody-
we wouldn't be voting
But
on
I-
mandatory MPR requirements in the.
It's just it's just
Let's
right
chat about it whenever.
No, because it wasn't just, it wasn't brought up in that manner, it's funny,
Mr. Chair,
so.
Joe's gonna have.
Please.
I just had a question because it's been brought up repeatedly that minority party representation is across the state of Connecticut. We are in the minority. We're the outlier. There's 2 or 3 other. I mean, what do people think about? Is it that why is Norwalk an outlier in that term, in that regard?
I believe the legal justification is because of the way the districts are.
Because you have districts.
Geographic.
Because we have.
So there's an anomaly in terms of,
The way NPR works in the state of Connecticut is if you have an at-large system, you have to have NPR. If you have districts, you don't have to have NPR. There are some at-large entities similar to Norwalk that have adopted NPR, but they don't legally have to do it. So the way the statute is developed, if you have districts, the concept of the district is that it gives all comers, Ds, Rs, Cs, communists, whoever it might be, an opportunity to go door to door, knock on the doors and get elected by district. And that's the concept of the statute. And if you have a district system, you have no requirement to have NPR.
May I make a couple quick points? We're limited right now by the number of seats we have. There are 18 seats, I think, here. Of course, you can add seating up here in the front, which would be kind of weird because because we're at the same level, and there's no reason we can't have an even number of city council, and we have 100 senators, so there's no reason that it can't be even, and someone like the mayor will cast a tie-breaking vote or something like that, which involves obviously a different conversation, but so I'm not tied to 20. I think 18 would fit perfectly in this room at this point. But this is really, it's not as much a national problem, although it is a national problem, but it's also a local problem. The Republican town committee, I don't see a whole lot of young people on the town committee. I just don't. And I think that the Republicans can fix.
Why are we getting into the political side of this? We're discussing about
I agree.
representation.
We're discussing a
Now we're
representation
saying
and why.
party representation and who's moving
We're,
forward.
we're talking about why it is or how it is that that we have a 14-1, a city council. It's not just a national party issue. And so, I mean, if you don't want to talk about, the composition of the Republican town committee, that's fine. But I would look in, within the party itself to figure out, what needs to happen for people to do what they have done historically, which is a vote Republican in the city.
I would say that has to do with both parties. That's why I don't understand
We
that language has to be
we
put
could
into the
potentially
charter.
put this to bed if Jim.
Since.
Make your motion.
Mr.
Yeah,
Chair,
yeah,
since Mr.
Make your motion.
Armstead withdrew his motion, may I make that?
Yeah.
I did.
This has been
Yes,
withdrawn.
I'm sorry.
You are welcome to make your motion.
So I'd like to make a motion that we add one council person per district. So that would be an additional 5 members on the common council.
For a total of 20.
for a total.
Okay.
Thank you, yes.
Okay, and if, well,
Now,
we'll do that.
it's a simple, that's a very simple.
That is your motion. Okay.
Does that, do I meet all the necessary requirements for a motion, council?
You don't need a second
We
under.
don't need a second, so we will do a vote, going down the line.
We can
Can I
have
ask-
discussion on it.
Caveat to
Sure.
that,
Yes,
would you say will take effect in 2027?
Interesting.
it would not be this election.
Well, it can't be
No,
this.
can't be this one.
Obviously.
Because it's on the.
2027.
I just want to get a thing, if you
2027.
pass something, I gotta find private
Yeah.
counsel, I gotta get appointed, what are they gonna do, you know?
2027.
2027 is when you
Should I-
want it to be
Okay,
effective.
so I'll amend that too, that would take effect in 2027.
Okay,
Yeah, but you don't have to, I was just thinking, but you don't have to do redistricting because you're.
No, no.
That's
We already did it.
Didn't we
It's simple. Now, may I actually follow, this is not part of the motion, may I follow up with a comment?
you can.
This is actually, I've never really commented on NPR. NPR and also, the comment that I have the chairman made about, too few women on our boards and whatnot. And while I agree that, we need more robust representation in all areas of our city, to me, that's not a charter issue, that's a recruitment issue. We need to get out there, all of us, and find the people who care about our city and want to get involved in helping us govern our city. We need to make sure we reach out to them. And we need to reach out to other underrepresented groups. But the reason I have a little bit of problem with my authority with NPR in concept is we're saying, you know what? You're in. You're in. That's it. So it's like we're giving people, you know, it's something about that, and I'm not able to articulate as clearly as I'd like, but something about that feels like an artificial. And I don't know why that is, because I don't feel that way when it comes to issues about equity and people like say, you know, there I feel it's clear.
I think if you were to guarantee 205 at large. To get a seat. The minority party, you put a slate together, you don't have to do anything.
That's what I'm saying.
You don't have to put in the work. So, well, let's vote on your motion, okay?
I think.
Well,
Let's do the discussion,
Oh, okay.
discussion on,
Okay.
okay. Time?
No, just to piggyback off what you said, when I've heard everyone mention NPR, we need more representation, we need more party representation, but no one talks about any other type of representation, diversity, or gender, or sexual orientation. It's just on your political party, and kind of going back to what Ed said, it shouldn't be based on your political, because that can change. There are many members of this community that have maybe started out one way and sway the other, but no one talks about all the members and all the public comments have only been about the political party, not about the actual people. So not about having more women or having more Hispanics, African Americans, Asians, whatever it is. No one talks about including everyone, just as long as you have an R behind your political affiliation.
John and then Rick.
Let's,
Did you have your hand raised? Or was it?
You had-
I'd like to. I'm willing to wait for others if they wish to.
Rick, I think. had a
No, I had just,
quick follow-up.
just something funny that came into my head here was that this year we have 2 female candidates of the 3 announced candidates running for mayor. So times have changed because that wouldn't have happened 10 years ago or even sooner. But I just want to point out that we have 2 right now, and there could be possibly others. So
Member of the party has the only female mayor.
you are, and that worked out real well for the town. Thank you.
I apologize if I'm missing anyone. I'm looking one direction or the other. and I don't want
It's
to-
tough.
So just yell out if I missed you. John, do you want to have
Okay, John.
your comment?
So let me just take a moment to explain to you what the problem is that we are trying to address for minority party representation, because I think that has been lost. We have lost sight of what the problem is. And for those of you who read it, I know not everyone reads the emails that I will send to our commission, but there was a January 18th email that was sent to the commission members that discussed the problem that Norwalk has now with its elections, and that is describing just the at-large candidates. So for the 5 at-large council seats in the 2023 municipal election, for those 5 seats, the Democratic candidates got 55% of all the votes. Okay, but they got 100% of the 5 seats. That is the problem. There's 45% of the other votes who are saying, wait a second, where is my representation? Now, I can't say, you know, you don't know what party voted for what candidate. It's only the people that are the candidates themselves that identify by party. So, you know, independent party candidates may have gotten votes from Republicans or Democrats, who knows? And frankly, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter to me. And this is not supposed to be a carve out for any one individual party or minority party. I know, you know, in our country, we have a 2-party system. Big problem. I have big problems with it. I wish we did not have a 2-party system, but it is the reality. But right now, you know, when you have 55% of the votes for the Democratic candidates and 45% for other candidates, but that 45% gets no representation on the council at all. That is the problem. That's the problem that we're trying to address. And it doesn't mean that, you know, the person, you know, that Republicans get 2 free seats or something like that. For all I know, it could be, you know, socialist or working family party, or to me, it doesn't really matter. What we have heard from our constituents is that they don't feel represented. And that this way of electing the council shuts out a significant number of voters just because of the way it's structured. Now, there are a bunch of solutions. Minority party representation is one of them. It's the one that's actually allowed. We're not going to discuss cumulative voting. I circulated information about that. That is a way to address this kind of problem of of achieving proportional representation. As Steve will remind us, it's not allowed in Connecticut. Until it is, it's not a viable solution, but NPR is allowed. It's the second best, in my view, it's the second best solution. And really the only one that's actually allowed. And just a gentle reminder, the way the minority party representation language is supposed to be worded is that the majority party may not have more than half the seats plus 1. So if you were to look just at the, let's say, at-large candidates of the 5, the majority party would be limited to no more than 3 of those seats. And if the electors, only gave them 3, that would be not a problem at all. But in the current case, the 5 highest vote getters are the Democratic candidates only. But those 2 candidates, at least in the most recent election, they got 55% of the total votes. And the next person who would be of a different party could be any party. Doesn't have to be a Republican, doesn't have to be independent or anything. It's just whoever it is that is not that party that's running the race would be awarded the seat.
But John, that's in reference to a very specific recent election, right? If you had an election where you had 5 of the candidates, and it doesn't matter what party, if you had 2 of the candidates that were just particularly abhorrent and received 10% of the votes, they'd get in. Now, 10% of the votes are representing who 90% of the people want.
And then the question becomes, what's your threshold? If 55 is not enough, percent of the vote to basically be elected, then should it be that do candidates have to get 100% of the votes? So that if the top 5 vote getters get 100%, should that be enough? Then they would represent the entire. No, but that's never going to happen, right? So what's your threshold?
Again, I'm really focused just on the problem, and that is that there's a significant
But the
number of
solution-
voters
your
who
solution
feel
now-
shut out of, who feel that they have been shut out of the.
Yes, sir.
If we could, maybe, if there's more discussion about my motion, we could have that. If not, we could have the vote for that.
We
And
should,
then, because mine
yep.
doesn't include anything but.
Correct. We should vote. We're gonna, is there any more discussion on Jim's motion, which would expand the size of the council by 5 by adding 1 representative per district and leaving the 5 at large?
I was gonna make a friendly amendment to propose 3 at large, but in light of John's comments, you're right, that would, 3 at large would probably lock in 3 more Democratic people, so.
Depends.
So I think 1 per each district, could, gives the district a chance to vote for 2 Democrats, 1 Republican, or 2 Republican, 1 Democrats as they, as the districts see fit, so I support that.
Okay, so if there's no further discussion, I think we can vote on Jim's motion. So
Roll call.
we'll do a roll call. We'll go down Jim.
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Carl?
Abstain.
I'm going to abstain. Doug?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Okay, Tanya?
Yes.
Ed?
Yes.
So 7 yes, 2 abstain to expand the size of the council. Okay. Motion passes.
And it's a winner take all scenario, so whoever wins, wins.
Correct. There's no MPR related to that.
Correct. Right.
Okay. So that, I believe, resolves 2 of the items on our checklist.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see what's up next one now that we've gone down. This was. That's something that's.
Two addition. No, that was just gonna, let's say authority. Size.
Authority. Term limits, we're not doing.
We can't do term limits. Let me just say, I'm saying we can't do term limits. I think I've advised everybody that there is no express grant of authority in the state of Connecticut that permits us to have term limits in Connecticut. Even though there are some charters that have them, that's a different issue. I did not represent those. I represent one actually, but it was in the charter.
We get the. Go to State House and get it overturned.
Yes, you could.
I guess the next issue there was,
You can do this, or you can-
I think we've already voted on this, we can discuss. I guess it came up. Okay, so we've already voted on this. We had somebody express support for leaving it at 5 years for a mandatory charter revision as opposed to what we've changed it to at 10. So we've had the discussion, we've had the vote. I don't know if there's any new information there that would warrant re-voting on it unless somebody wants to make a motion to undo what we've already voted on.
So we voted on having it every
We
5.
voted on having it every 10 years.
However, yeah.
It'll be
We can
10
discuss
years.
this then.
Yeah. Leave out, so.
I'd like to revisit that.
Okay,
And that's but simply by making it change from the 10 to 5. So I just asked for Brady to verify it. It used to be 10 years for the rebound, now it's every 5. So, it does make it mandatory in every 5. And I think it is a better, having, now that we're considering sending another change on, it kind of, somebody's gonna have to make some other decisions along the way with this. So I'd like to, how we do it, I guess to say I propose changing the 10-year to 5 years.
you make that motion?
Actually, that would not be a change. That would be not a change.
Retaining.
Retaining what we have.
You make a motion to retain the
Okay.
All right.
original language, because
Yeah,
undo the change.
yeah.
Is that your motion?
That's my motion, sir.
I'll speak to the motion.
Yes, Rick.
I agree with that. I think when we were discussing about the reval and different things, plus with the way that we have now finally are doing charters. You know, we look at it and we always joke that the charter was from 1934. Well, it took us a long time to get to 2023 to make it usable to a point. Now here we are 2 years later and we're making more adjustments to it. So I think if we wait 10 years, it's gonna be like going back to 1934 again. I think with different ways and population in the city, the way boards and commissions are put together, I think it's probably a smart move if we move it back to what we did have as 5.
I don't think the more frequent iterations, you know, you develop best practices.
That's
You have kind of,
just what I was looking
you know,
for to say. Thank you, Joe. That was the way I was trying to get best practice on my head.
There's nothing stopping us from at 5 year deciding we can go to 10 at that point, because I remember Counselor said that there was, 10 years in some places.
Well, most places, but you can do a charter revision every year, the 5 years.
You're right. You can do a chart.
My wife, my grandchildren would be very happy if we did that, but the point I was gonna make is you can do it every year. The council has discretion to do charter revision whenever they have. The idea of the 5 or 10 year is to make sure that they do take a look at these things from time to time.
I would just make a comment in support of 5. Times change rather quickly now. Populations will increase, maybe some decrease, but I think it'll increase. And I think by staying on top of it every 5 years, just keeps it more relevant than it would be pushing things up to 10. I think it keeps everybody in touch.
And certainly every 5 years, we can revisit this discussion about minority party.
Yes, they can.
Which I think is something.
Remember
later at this
The
point.
shoe changes. on
I
the
think
foot.
that every.
When we have a full female council and female mayor, you're right, pal.
I think that every 10 years provides stability. I think redoing the United Constitution every 5 years, you can imagine that the disruption that would cause. The city council can, as Attorney Metnick says, can convene a charter revision commission every year if it wants to. This is just a minimal requirement, and I think that to do it every 5 years would be potentially a disruptive, and I just don't see the rationale for it, given that the city council can convene a charter revision commission whenever it wants to.
So even council could, if it's coming up to have a charter revision in 5 years, determine that we don't need one.
I don't know, I think.
No, if you have a requirement, then you have to start the process now. The council might say, in the 5 year reviews, we don't think there's anything worth reviewing. We're appointing a commission, and if you bring anything back to us, you'll have coal for Christmas.
That's my question.
But it requires that you actually do it. Go through some exercise.
I have a quick question. Do we think that things will change that drastically in 5 years from like the changes we've made now?
They could.
That drastically?
They could. I
You
think,
don't know the cause and effect.
Population has,
Where were you 5 years ago?
the population has.
The population is at 90,000,
Yeah,
but it was at 80,000 10 years ago.
yeah.
Right.
81,
3,000.
84,000, probably less than that.
So it hasn't changed that much.
That's what I'm saying. So
I just don't want to keep revisiting these issues these issues every 5 years. It's just, you need to be able to plan, you need to be able to know what you need to have a certain set of expectations about how to proceed. And I think that although it was well intentioned, when the commission decided on 5 years, a couple of years ago, I think we would be an outlier in that regard. I think among the cities in the state of Connecticut, I think every 10 years is more deliberative potentially, and I think makes the most sense. Particularly since the city council can do it anytime they want.
John and then Doug. Sorry if I missed anybody down there.
Yeah, so I understand that the commission, the Charter Revision Commission that was formed 2 years ago, included the requirement that there be this commission created 2 years later, specifically to review the work of that commission and address unfinished business, which, as I understand it, had included 4-year term. That was something that couldn't be considered then because I I don't know, Tyler and Carl, you were on that commission. You could tell us why it couldn't be considered then. But in any case, we have avoided considering it now. Even though I think there was an implied mandate from the commission from 2 years ago that we should be considering. Anyway, my point is that charter revision commissions do not create inherent instability. I don't think this commission has created instability in city government. I don't think it has destroyed people's expectations or prevented them from having
I'm not saying
expectations.
commissions do.
So I think that this charter revision process, having sat on this commission for the first time, is a profound discovery of what a local government, is capable of doing, and that this is exactly the method and the tool that is used to make local government better, to make our city more democratic, small d democratic. And to make the rules fairer for everyone.
No one
And
disagrees.
things do change quickly. It's not just the population of our city, but technology changes, awareness changes. The Overton window is approaching this, is moving fast on so many issues now. I think 5 years, which was selected by the last commission 2 years ago, is good. There's some cities in Connecticut that have 5 years, some have fewer than 5 years. 10 years, 10 years is, in my view, really too long, because it will allow problems to remain and fester, like the 4-year term. The council is not going to appoint a charter commission to extend their terms to 4 years. So as a result, that won't ever come up again until 10 years after, 10 years after. And I think it is something that should be addressed, that voters deserve to vote on. So anyway, this is exactly the kind of process when done properly, it invites public participation. The public is involved and informed, and 5 years is a good set of time, 5 years.
Okay, so should we able to vote on this, or Doug, did you have more further comment? Tanya?
And only because we've made some adjustments, so there is, like adding the additional council member, that won't start till 2027. So there's a lot of things that we've now put in place that won't start for now. So the next charter revision would be 2030, which I don't feel gives us enough time to see if the decisions we've made now, do we have enough data to see if this actually works, or if that's something we need to address? So that's my only concern with having the 5 years now. Maybe in the future, but we've made some changes as opposed to when things would start, as far as the police commissioner, fire commissioner. When the mayor is elected in these certain parts of his cabinet, how do we know if this is helpful, or how do we know we should either revert back or do something else if we only have barely 3 years to see if this was actually helpful?
Makes sense.
Okay,
So, in answer to your question, I think to do it every 5 years, you're right about with one term in, you might not do it, but by that point, the stuff, the items that were done 2 years ago, we'll have enough time to get through a gauntlet of, does this work or doesn't work? Did they change the time people got sworn in? Didn't change certain offices? There are gaps that we didn't look at. And I think one of our, and I've said it numerous times, we'll keep it, maybe with a 5-year plan, they'll plan ahead of game. We got a mandate of nothing. What I mean is, they said just do things for good government. There was no specificity of what they wanted to address as the mandate. They came later at a public hearing and told us what they wanted to look at. I'm just saying, maybe with a 5-year window, they could start accumulating, saying, okay, it's what we need to look at, we need to look at. I mean, they could just say, okay, we're gonna do a charter revision in 5 years, and we want you to take it and change it to 10 years. And that'd be it. send it on, sort of charter review commission, and that's it. I mean, they, you know, they can do it that way. I just, 10 years is too long. I don't think 5 years is,
I mean,
that's all.
as a practical matter, we've done a lot of, between the commission 2 years ago and this commission. To be honest, like what's left, it's a 4-year term and minority party representation revisiting that issue. You're never gonna get rid of taxing districts, so what really is left?
Well, I just think, me personally, some of the terms of office, the way they coincide with the election, some of that
Yeah,
stuff still
that'll be-
lags.
yeah.
There needs to be addressed.
Clean stuff.
You know, but who knows, because the gentleman that was here the other night says, can you make this more simple and more readable and more, you know, that appeals to the group.
But
It was-
that's,
it was-
that's technology, because I
But
downloaded
to
the entire
adopt,
thing.
to adopt the
and I
language
put it
from
in
that.
ChatGPT, and I said, can you give me a summary in 2 pages,
And they did.
and it did, so
Yeah.
the technology you're talking about is here. I downloaded it to my computer. I put it in ChatGPT. I said, can you summarize this entire charter in 2 pages or less?
Like a boss.
Yeah, it was.
We're
Yeah,
smarter
No,
now.
I'm not disagreeing with, I'm saying, but if you had to adapt those changes, or it went through an ID some stuff, you put Steve out of a job, number one.
Well,
I'm
no,
only
we're gonna
kidding,
keep
but
Steve.
The,
but all it does is, it just gives the public more access. So, okay, I
Yeah,
see this
no.
big thing. All right, go ahead and ChatGPT. Let's go.
You can even ask it to just tell me what the changes are.
Yes.
right, that's what I'm saying, so why not put
You
it?
can personalize it. I talk to mine every day.
Well, let's, you see a couple more things. We'll vote on the motion. Doug's motion was to retain the 5-year mandatory language that had been in the air prior to us changing it to 10. Go down the line.
Yes retains, a yes vote.
A yes vote means retain the 5 years, do not change it to 10 years.
Yes.
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 Yes,
Yes,
Yes.
Abstain.
no,
I'm also a no. So the yeses have 2 no's, 1 abstain. Okay? So we have covered that issue.
Can I ask just an overall question, since it sort of ties in to this commission and other commissions? Because Jim made a very good point, and I've always banged on that. I would like to see something that when there is something as important as a charter commission, it's going to be put together. Is it okay for the city to solicit for people that might be interested in being on that commission?
Yes, certainly.
Okay.
don't call me.
That
Do not call me.
Solicitation is,
Would-
solicitation is
well,
legal and
would
encouraged.
Well, it's easy to
In this
ask. for.
regard.
Would you like to get to be part of a body that goes for 6 weeks? It feels like a year and a half.
You've done it twice now.
No, I mean, I have a problem with that we just don't communicate with the folks in this town about government as much and as often as we could.
Yeah, and
I mean,
I think we had some great public input from one of the guys, one of the residents who came out. Last time, he has since offered to his services, and we are not as a commission able to, I think, take on marketing campaigns on behalf of the city, whether they're free or not. I don't think we have.
well,
that
I don't know
authority.
that there'd be a marketing campaign, Mr. Chairman. I'm just saying that maybe as part of the fact that, every 5 years is a charter commission, and the city should make every effort to solicit from
Well,
the,
and that was.
from the population, those who might be interested in serving.
Well, agreed, and what, I mean, part of the reason that I was a no on the 5 versus 10, I prefer 10, is that I don't know that I don't know that the purpose of I don't know that the purpose of a charter revision commission is to just have it be a coffee clatch about what's going on in city government. I mean, it is a very serious
No, I
process.
don't think that's what.
Right, and I don't think that's what you're suggesting, but I think there need to be other ways, Carl, point where you reach out to people who want to be involved and are willing to volunteer. You make things like this easier for people to understand in context of things that are going on. And I think we should do that. I don't know that that needs to be memorialized in the charter. I think there are ways to do it, but I am 100% in agreement with you that we need to find a way to do that. Steve?
So it's quite interesting. Before the meeting started this evening, I was having a conversation with somebody next door in Stamford, where they've had what they call recruitment problems, and mayors, we see this in other communities as well, where mayors complain that it's hard to find people to serve on boards and commissions. So what I've done in a few charters, and we're awfully late in the game here, guys, and I don't have any language to show you, but we might say to the council,
This
This
is
issue came
Capital
up-
Friday as a reminder before we
Yeah.
have too much.
we do take a look at this issue while you have it. But I've got provisions in a couple charters that allow members of the public to put their names into the town clerk's office, the city clerk's office, the mayor's office. If they want to serve on a board or commission, they can do it. You publish board and commission lists twice a year. I have one charter that actually requires the mayor and or the city or town clerk to solicit, to be out in the community, go to the Kiwanis Club, Rotary Club, churches, and synagogues, the sororities, the fraternities, all the organizations in town to proselytize and to encourage public involvement. So there are provisions, if this is something that you think is useful that we have missed, you can certainly, in a letter that we're drafting, go out on Friday, say, we did not resolve this issue, but we'd ask you to take a look at the issue while it's at the council.
I think that'd be a good,
Yeah.
good point. Good idea.
And can I just say, not to use Diane Lorchell, I feel like I know her, it's like the 8th member of the commission.
We all know.
Is brought up the issue of gender diversity and equity. And I want to tell you, this did not come up really in this process, but in one of my charters, in Camden, we spent a lot of time breaking down diversity issues, and it goes, it doesn't say you need to do this or that. It's not a quota system, but it talks about various forms of diversity. You want to make sure that boards of diversity include color, race, ethnicity, religious creed, age, sex, national origin, ancestry, status as a veteran, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, just a whole range of factors that they're taken into consideration. You also want to take into consideration when you're looking at diversity in terms of boards and commissions, geography, to make sure that we did this with the Board of Estimate, right? We did with the B and T, is geographic area representation, to make sure planning and zoning commission or whatever isn't all from one neighborhood. And then the last area is backgrounds. You want to make sure that, God forbid, that not every member of a board or commission is, I don't need to insult Attorney Camacho or myself, lawyers. We don't want to have lawyers dominating every commission. You want to have people from all different kinds of backgrounds. And so those are the kinds of things that we've looked at, didn't come up here, but when she raised it tonight, I wanted to at least raise that there is robust language that can be developed, and that might be another thing you ask the council to do, because I don't think there's any way you can resolve it tonight.
All right, now.
Very nicely put.
Maybe we can bring that up in 5 years.
Or 10.
I'm gonna be playing shuffleboard in 5 years, so we'll figure.
Email me, let me know how to make that.
Okay, so the term limits is out. So I think the last thing we need to discuss then is the 4-year term. It's come up a couple of times. There's been discussion that there was either
Wait a second. What about minority party representation? I know that we adopted the proposal made by Commissioner Jim Clark. But
was the understanding, John, was that was in lieu of NPR.
no, it wasn't.
That was the.
That was everyone else's understanding. If you'd like to make a motion for NPR, you're welcome to do so. I don't know how swimmingly it's gonna go. That was the whole point of that discussion, John. Make a motion. Go
Okay, sure. I will make a motion to untable proposal 1.
You don't have to, you don't have to untable. You can just make a
Okay.
motion, for whatever NPR you want to see.
Sure. I propose that we adopt NPR language for the 5 at-large council seats. That would be under collective, that would carve out effectively 2 seats for non-majority party of the 20 seats on the council.
Okay, well, I don't know that we need to discuss this, because unless I missed something, we just discussed it for like an hour, so let's just go,
Well, I think the way to do it is to find out if anybody has anything to say before we proceed.
Would anybody like to comment on, or offer any discussion on this item that we've discussed?
Okay, then I will. It's gonna just be a gentle reminder. Jim Clark, you mentioned, or someone mentioned that I was, Tyler, it was you. You mentioned that I had referred only to the 2023 municipal election for at-large council candidates. Really, the same numbers appear in the 2019 municipal election for at-large candidates. In that case, the Democratic candidates got 57% of the total votes, but again, were awarded 100% of the 5 council seats. So this proposal would, it's not perfect. NPR is not perfect, but at least I think it would address the concern that so many members of our city have brought up relating to feelings a lack of representation on the council.
Okay, we will, any other further discussion on NPR? We'll do a roll call vote on John.
No,
Yes.
Carl?
We're voting yes or no for,
You are voting yes, you are supporting John's,
my vote's no.
okay? My vote is no.
Abstain.
I vote yes.
No.
We have 3, 5, 3,
Or 3-5.
which is not.
The nays have it.
Okay, so the last item then from our checklist is the 4-year term. It is the 4-year term for mayor. This is something that we had discussed previously, similar to the NPR, in that it had been previously discussed, voted on, and lost. But because it has come up again at the meeting, we're going to discuss it again. Is there a motion by anyone here to increase the, well, we heard from people who supported, I believe there's support for somebody who supported individually expanding the mayor's term to 4 years. There was somebody who's supported both the mayor and the council to 4 years. So is there a motion to extend the term of the mayor to 4 years?
I'll make that motion, just for the mayor.
Okay. Jim, is a standalone motion for the mayor. Is there any discussion?
Yes. There's a couple ways to do this. I know that there's concern about, I don't know about these things, but some type of political reaction to that particular item. I would say that we can break it out as a, recommend that it be included as a separate referendum item by itself, rather than included in like an omnibus referendum
Is that possible, Mr.
for all
Chair?
those changes.
It's possible. I think we discussed
Separate
last time,
question.
you can have a separate question.
Separate question.
But that's not up to us, it's up to the council.
Right,
That was
yeah,
the council.
but we can make
Which
that
they turn
recommendation to the council to make it a
Would
separate
certainly
question.
Make that recommendation. And additionally, just in the time frame that we're in, this seems to be one of the best times to do it, because we're gonna have a new mayor. It won't be seen as, an incumbent trying to get, 4 more years, and that's not gonna happen very often. I've been in favor of 4-year terms for a long time. I know owners who have been served on boards like BT, when you have 2-year term, it's just, it hurts your long-term planning in particular. And, well, there are a lot of reasons. I think we talked about it before, so. I'll just-
we've covered it.
Yeah. so
I would tell you that in the last charter commission, we kicked this around a lot once you made. And if memory serves me right, and it may not, when we started this, council, mayors, whoever were in favor of a 4-year term. When it got to where we put it in front of council for council's approval, they could take it back to 2.
Mhm.
They didn't approve the 4, they didn't want the 4, they only wanted a 2-year term for the mayor, a 2-year term for council as well. Well, I mean, anything's possible. I don't know. My feeling, and if you're finished,
Oh, yeah.
my jump in, anything? My my feeling is, and I know the reasons, but I'll elaborate on them here. This package has to go to the electorate to be approved, which fortunately, the last charter in election was approved by 85% of the electorate, which was actually outstanding. Had there been a 4-year term for mayor then, and you're right, things are changing, it would have gone down to defeat, huge defeat. So we have an opportunity this time to die. Now, all I would say is this has got to go before council. They can say yay or nay, right? If they say nay, it's done.
Correct. We are making recommendations.
They can make, so. I say if you're in favor of it, fine. It's got to go to council, then whatever council says, we're gonna live with it anyway.
I was gonna just comment quickly, so we have a motion right now from Jim to extend the mayor's term by 2 years to 4 total years. John, was yours an amendment to add it as a separate question?
I would say if the proposal passes, then we can vote on what I.
Well, it would
We
have
need to
only,
amend my motion to include a
it
year.
would have only
I
gone,
was gonna offer an amendment to include a year, which would start in 2029.
Yeah,
Was my
that
suggestion,
was what I was going
That
to
was-
ask for an amendment to 2029.
which I think removes, so I think just to
Takes
touch
the
on.
politics out of it.
Basically, just the politics out of it. I think this was something we discussed last, we've covered the bases here, which was that we didn't include it last time because we thought it was a poison pill and we had done too much work and just didn't have time to cover it. I don't know that we gave a mandate implied or otherwise to this commission to touch the 4-year term. It was just one of the unresolved things. And it was, let's cover the unresolved things. Part of the reason it was so unpopular then, it was seen as a power grab by the incumbent mayor, and we now know that there is going to be a non-incumbent in 25, and then who knows what will happen in 27, and then 29 is its own thing. So if there was ever a time to consider it, it would be now. So my amendment, Jim, to your motion would be to consider a 4-year mayoral term beginning with the 2029 election.
I would agree with that.
Yes.
And Doug, let's go.
Well, I'm kind of surprised that it's being discussed, because early on, we kind of tabled it. And then we felt that the council, the next charter revision should be focused strictly on the 4-year term, their council terms, whatever the terms they wanted for office. And we were gonna advise the city council, do another charter revision, don't put anything else on the table, just focus on this. So, because again, I don't care if you separate it or what you do with it, it's still gonna muck it up. So, now, I'm saying that at one part, because I thought had already kind of resolved that issue.
But
Yeah,
always-
we're gonna go down this, we're gonna vote on this, and I'm gonna vote no, and I'll tell you why.
Well, sure.
I
Well, one
believe in
reason I-
accountability. I believe, for a lot of reasons, what Mr. Camacho brought up, that if we got a bad mayor or a bad council, I want them out sooner versus later. You know, a bad egg can come from anybody. So,
That's true.
I've just always been that way. I've never changed. It's one of those few things that I think I would prefer 2 years because the sooner. I wish we could have senators every 2 years along with so that's just the way I personally feel, but I also feel that I should adopt what we were doing at this point a few weeks ago and just do a recommendation to the council, take this up as a separate issue. All right, so it can get focused and get on and nothing else gets muddied with it, because it will happen.
Fair points.
Point taken, but
Fair point.
the reason I made the motion just for the mayor is because I feel like adding the council to the equation complicates it immeasurably. It has so many valid points from people. both in favor and opposed, that made it seem like that would be too heavy of a lift to do now. So that's why I
Yep.
personally did not. I think the timing of this mayoral, if we decide to pass it, I think could be the best time we'll get.
I would agree.
So that's just.
I mean, in the last charter, I actually proposed a 4-year term for both. Because I believe in 2 years, you don't get much done. Because you're always
And you're
running,
campaigning again.
you're campaigning and with particular capital projects, I mean, 2 years, you barely get started with
This mayor
some.
has to get up to speed, budget stuff.
Exactly.
And so we've seen that.
It takes a while.
There's that ramp up.
Yep.
If we have a strong council, kind of to Doug's point, if we have a strong council, they can kind of buck through while, if the mayor turns out to be a little bit duh, but I still think that the 4 years is.
So that 4 years for mayor and council?
No, this is just, what I'm proposing right now is just 4 years for the mayor.
And
I
that's,
know that the other thing will come up at some point, probably, but I don't want to address it.
and that's part of, I just feel we haven't weighed in enough on this early on, because part of the other discussion is who's gonna show up in the odd years with zoning council people. We can't get more than 16 to 17,000 people when we run a mayor.
Correct.
Right, which is why I was gonna suggest, if we're gonna do the mayor vote, and I'm sorry, I think you had something.
No, I actually have just a question for Tyler. Why, was there a specific reason that you suggested 29 instead of 27 to input?
Because
Further
it'll be
remove it.
4 years from now as opposed to.
Yeah,
So it would start in 2029
2029, we would be electing a mayor.
for
who would
4
serve
years.
For 4 years.
It'll be one less thing for the Charter Revision Commission in 5 years to do.
No, but that's what's going back, because now you only have 1 year in.
Unless they change it back in.
Now you
But I
only
was
have
gonna
1 year in.
But I-
And you will have great conversations with yourself. You'll just move things right along.
Here I am again, but there's something to do. What I was gonna suggest was that because of the off-year election problem, if we're gonna do a 4-year, if we're gonna consider a 4-year term for mayor, the city council already feels that they don't really have much say, even though they say it's a strong city council, weak mayor. It's the opposite. It's really a strong mayor, weak city council. I think that it would further weaken the city council by leaving them at 2 years. So it seems to me that if we're gonna consider a 4-year term for mayor, we should consider a 4-year term for city council, have them separate on the ballot. So we would have the main work that we've done as one question, the 4-year term for mayor as the second question, and the 4-year term for city council as the third question. Let the voters decide what they want to do, but I think that having a 4-year term for mayor and a very weak city council at that point, that has to run for re-election every 2 years, a mayor can wait them out. And or campaign against them, I think that would be problematic, so I think that we should consider both, albeit in the form of separate questions.
Well, what if one passes and one doesn't?
And so be it, and that's what voters,
So we
that's
have
what the
4-year
voters.
council and 2-year mayor.
And then it's the
Vice
voters.
Or vice
That's
versa.
exactly what will happen.
I mean, that's,
It is.
But Doug brought up a good point about the turnout in the off-year.
yeah, and that's the way to cure that, that's the way to cure that turnout.
It's just all.
Well, not really, you still have Board of Ed. The
Oh, Board of Ed.
Board of Ed, no, and we went, if I may.
Please.
It's not part of debate, but it's reality. Yeah, the by-election is going to be a low turnout election. In 2002, Hartford created a stagger on their Board of Ed and assumed that the Board of Ed would attract a lot of voters. It just didn't happen. So they went back into a cycle where Hartford does not have a by-election. The Board of Ed will be elected along with the council and with the mayor. One of the, if I may,
Yeah.
because this is a very important issue,
Yeah.
so I don't want to try to tilt debate, and if you think I'm
No,
doing
let
that,
me
Mr.
ask
Chair.
you, Counselor, there
Yeah.
are solutions that we have not considered.
Right.
That's what that means.
Thank you.
Yes.
And so the different theories are, you have a theory that Commissioner Camacho has laid out, where you have equality between the two bodies. One other theory, and I don't know anybody who has done this, but it's something I've recommended in a couple of occasions, is I honestly think that if you have, there's a theory that if you have the council elected every 2 years, they become the accountability standard within the community. And so if you have a situation that the vice chair has talked about where you have an errant mayor, you have a real opportunity for the voters in the by-election, which would normally be a placid, quiet election, to elect people on a district basis or even at large basis to offset the mayor. And so if you have a Democratic mayor, you end up with a Republican council. Theoretically, that's what could occur in that cycle. The other way to approach it would be to, if you're going to go with the 4-year for each term, have them in different election cycles. Because the other issue that you have is mayors in strong parties tend to bring in councils with them. If you have them on a stagger, mayor elected, in 29, 4-year council elected in 31, then the council really does become the counterweight, and they both get the 4-year term. So the idea of setting up the counterweight may be a useful consideration.
You'll always have a Board of Ed election because they are staggered too.
They're staggered, so Board of Ed will be tacked on to either the mayor's election or
Or
the,
the city council. That makes sense.
so I mean, I just wanted to
No,
raise that,
thank you,
yeah.
thank you. I was wondering if we had-
Yeah, I understand that what we're doing here is just making a recommendation to the council to consider the 4-year term. So really, that is where my direction wants to go with it. I'm not making a decision if I'm in favor of the 4-year term or not. I'd like to, pass it on to the council and see how they kick it around, because that's going to be the party that's, could split or could all be in favor or against, because it also will have ramifications for them down the road too, if it's a 4-year mayor and 2-year council, like Attorney Mednick said. So I'm voting, my vote will be yes to make the recommendation to the council, and let's see how it plays out.
My amendment would be to also consider a 4-year term, to have them consider a 4-year term for city council and have them staggered, have the elections staggered the way Attorney Mednick suggests. So that every 2 years, there's a check and balance, there's a way for the voters to weigh in.
Question, before accepting that amendment, I'm just wondering, should we make these as 2 separate or should we combine them? What is the most effective way to do it?
I think it would probably make sense to split them.
Oh, yeah.
I think we should consider the mayor as a standalone thing. It's been suggested that
And then bring up Ed's amendment.
and then bring up Ed's amendment as a standalone item, because I think that might change how we consider it. Rick?
Yeah, I can remember back in 2016 when they had the wise decision of putting a 4-year term for the mayor and the town clerk. I want to believe that I probably would have survived a 4-year term as a town clerk, but I don't think the mayor ended up helping me get there.
Okay, so let's vote on the proposed 4-year term for mayor beginning in 2029, when Carl rejoins.
Okay, he didn't give it. No, he didn't give me his proxy.
Yeah, well, why, you can wait for Carl.
If it's close, and it's a.
Or we can vote it if he's the kind of.
I think we should respectfully wait for Carl.
All right. So Rick, you would be the only 2-year person.
Well, then good, I'll make the
With
constables.
You will make constables.
But
I'll make the comment. I'll make the concept to wait.
you're right.
I believe in what I believe in, but I also believe that
Here he
something that we
comes.
should have discussed in length at some time and looked at the alternatives and looked at the election figures, and all that, figuring all out terms and that stuff. We didn't dive into because we tabled it early. So we don't know cause and effect again, and we're just moving forward. I know it's a recommendation, but the charter revision and basically whether it says it or not is telling the council to take it up. So even more reasonable.
Okay, that's fair, Doug, I don't disagree. Disagree.
Okay, voted.
And I'll add a comment as well, if I may. So I agree with Doug's observations, and I personally oppose 4-year terms. Just because I believe that they will reduce accountability. versus a 2-year term. However, I trust the voters and I think that the voters should have a choice to decide for themselves what they want. And I think the council who's been elected by our city can decide whether they want to present it to the voters. So I'm fine with recommending a 4-year term, even though I personally would not support it.
Okay, so we will do the roll call for the 4-year mayoral term beginning in 2029. Jim,
No.
Carl,
Yes.
I am a yes.
No,
Rick?
Yes, is a recommendation to the council.
Yes, for also.
Yes, as a recommendation. Tanya?
Yes.
Yes. Ed?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, that motion passed. 7-2.
This is passed, but the reason I'm chiming in here is just to hear from commissioners on the last cycle who was there robust discussion about this last charter revision?
Oh, yeah.
All right,
Oh,
so.
yeah.
Not only amongst ourselves, but with council as well.
Yeah.
I would, in terms of the next vote, on the 4-year city council,
Yep.
I'm not trying to win at one vote on this, but I think we should also consider a 4-year term for clerk for the city, for the,
And
I'll tell you, 2029, the clerk will be in Anguilla, so you can do whatever you want. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do you want to do it 2031?
No, just let's keep it where it is.
Yeah, so 2031 for the 4-year term for council.
why not
31.
Yeah.
I like this, that's the
When
standard
the stagger, yeah, the
that
stagger.
you had mentioned. correct,
why
Attorney?
why not on 2030? 6 years out. Why not?
Because we're trying to stagger.
I know, but why not 2027?
Well, no, you know why? Because it'll coincide with, it'll also coincide with reapportionment in 2031, so it makes
Oh,
roughly.
I think 6 years is fine, but also,
You
I
can
think
discuss
if,
the next
you know,
charter
if the town clerk is the only elected official, well, I guess in the registrar
We have
voters,
the
that
constables.
gets voted, and the constables, well, I think the registrar voters too, right? They get voted every 2 years.
Yeah.
So that seems like.
Well, they're in the state.
They're on the
Well,
state.
they're state.
Yeah, state elections.
So, yeah, so I think that the town clerk shouldn't have to be the only person running every 2 years, so that would be my next one. And once again, so this is all for the city council to consider. They can say this is insane, or they can agree with it, but. And we can have them all as standalone questions, you know, so that the voters can decide one by one what they want to do.
Okay, are there any, is there any further discussion?
Wait, is that your motion?
Well, the motion, the second,
I just haven't heard a motion and ever just.
So I'm sorry, I thought that was the
Sorry.
motion to for your council starting in 2031.
Yes, that's a motion, but then following that, I would also propose that we include the clerk in that.
So it's
We'll do that as another, as a
As
third
a
vote.
third vote
So it's a 4-year term starting.
in 2031, so that
Council.
there's a stagger.
Thank you.
I just got a question.
had a question.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other boards or commissions whose terms run concurrently with the way it is now that would also need to be changed to run concurrently with the 4-year term?
We dealt with the.
That's what I'm saying, we didn't do a robust.
We'd have to,
Doesn't the police commission run? with the
I would
mayor?
have to research it, because there's a lot of boards and commissions, and you'd have to see where they fall.
Yeah, I thought police and fire ran.
Police and fire
concurrently
They're concurrent
with the mayor.
BET stagger.
There's others.
We're expanding the police commission from 2 years to 4 years also, then, right?
What is?
I just want to make
That
sure.
would be a
that-
separate.
keep rolling.
Yeah.
Cause and effect, though, it would, you know, it's like, okay, and having the police commissioners being there for 4 years, and you're, okay.
Are we discussing Ed's amendment,
We can discuss Ed's
the
amendment
motion? and-
or Ed's motion.
I mean, I think, I'm not sure what Richard said, that we're a city of 100,000 people now. And I think that running, you know, elections every 2 years is both expensive, and it's more like a town, a small town would do. I think that a big city really needs to have a four-year term. So at this point, if we're gonna consider it, at least the voter should weigh in on, I should be able to weigh in on that as well as the town clerk.
Jim?
So while I actually am in favor of a four-year term for council, I remember, and I thought it was you, Ed, that talked about how difficult it would be for council members to have a four-year term.
True.
I think it was
What
you.
changed,
And
changed
so what changed that?
was enlarging the city council to 20 people, so that it's really the workload.
All right,
That was the issue. Once we have a city council of 20, I think that the workload is manageable if the state should change the way that legislators can pay themselves and they can do it by ordinance, then that would solve that problem. So I think that having an additional 5 common council members, I think, makes the workload a lot easier.
okay.
So how would you stagger it?
It would be every 4 years, but it would be beginning in 2031.
So, yeah, I think Doug. Would it make sense? It's not, it's just everyone, right now, it's everyone every 2 years, right?
Correct, every 2 years.
And
Mayor,
really
the council,
talked about
Board of
staggering
Ed
the
stagger.
mayor and the common council, so that's built into this.
That's built in.
29 and 31.
Yes, but am I kind of getting, Doug, from you that you might want to see the common council staggered? Is that what I'm getting?
I'm asking that because the Board of Ed is gonna remain staggered.
Yeah, so
Every 2 years.
Every election cycle.
Every 2
the Board of
years.
Ed would be-
Well, I'm just saying, if you move the council to 4 years and you move the mayor to 4 years,
Because
now you got an election basically of district commissioners
well,
and Board of Ed and constables.
No, the Board of Ed is also every.
The Board of Ed is an
every
election
2
every
years.
The Board of Ed
Board
would
Ed
be
is-
on with the council
Not
or the mayor.
They'll be on the side of the council or the mayor.
even though this is.
Now you have an election of constables every year.
So it would just be constables, that's true, that would be a little.
No, but they're every 2 years, but there's always gonna be
Well,
a 3-year cycle.
And you're.
But there's always gonna be an election.
This is a staggered.
Every 2 years you're having an
There's
election.
always an election.
Yes.
You're never gonna have
I
an
knew that, but if the whole goal was to get public participation, how do we reach more people? Let's put an election year that you got district commissioners running and you got constables running.
It wouldn't be a standalone.
I want you to think about that. Who's gonna?
It wouldn't be.
who's gonna-
There would never be,
Just
never be a
It would
standalone.
be them with either.
They would always
the
be with
common
either the
council
mayor
or
or
the-
Right.
We can't, the commission, first of all, we can't tell the commission what the commission.
Well, that's their business.
District commission,
That's their
they do their
yeah,
own
that's
thing.
But in terms of the constables, they will always be on the ballot with the mayor or the council
They'll be on.
and the Board of Ed.
It wouldn't, people wouldn't have to, we wouldn't have to open the schools just for somebody to go vote for a council.
John
I think it's ridiculous. That's why I brought it up. I'm just saying, that's the.
No,
At that point, the next.
That's what I'm gonna find out. Councils are engaged.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a concern now.
Yes.
I think it was Doug that got that. Here, and that is that I worry about a body changing entirely for a cycle. Because if, without this, when you have a stagger,
Mhm.
you retain some of your institutional knowledge and some of your really important, just, things about how we govern here in Norwalk. And if every 4 years that whole body is new, like everyone's coming in new, well, how does it work here? Well, I don't know, I'm new, right? And so that concerns me as a matter of good governance that if we, so, it's probably, I would prefer
Yeah, I mean, we could,
staggered terms.
in theory, that could happen now. You
Well,
could
every two, well, yeah.
you would have them all cleared out, it's just every 2 years.
Yes,
So Jim, I think that one reasonable solution to that specific problem is to structure the council elections in the same way that the Board of Ed elections are structured. That is, they're 4-year terms for all members, but on 1 4-year schedule, at-large council, Board of Ed members and at-large council members would be elected for a 4-year term. And on the opposing 2-year, 4-year cycle, it would be in district for council and in district.
I think there you have the voter turnout problem, because so if you make the class of people that voters will vote for smaller, there's gonna be less interest. So I think that as long as you stagger the city council or the common council terms with the mayor, the Board of Ed is already staggered. and you throw in, hopefully at some point, the town clerk, I think that there'll be enough on the ballot every 2 years that you're not gonna have that. You're not gonna have like an election where, 600 people come out and vote.
I think that's also how you have checks and balance. So like say, you don't like what the mayor's doing, okay? In a couple of years, we'll have a new common council to make sure things are
Are you
going
speaking
around.
about if it's not staggered?
No, if it's staggered, so
It's staggered.
Are you
if it's
talking about staggered within the council or just the mayor,
with the mayor. So if the mayor's starting at 29, the council in 31, if the council or the city or whoever constituents don't
Yeah.
like what the mayor's doing, you have the council kind of like your checks and balance.
I definitely agree with that. I think I'm worried about passing on, passing the torch. If you're gonna have so many people do it at one time.
But that happens now, the mayor and the city council happens all at once.
Yeah, however, okay, so I'll tell you, so now with the 2-year term, we often have people running for reelections, do we not?
Yeah.
I'm wondering as when 4-year terms happen, if that same trend will continue.
Like this with the
For $50 a month, how could it not?
Well, that's,
Oh, no,
that's the
that's
thing,
been taken out.
with less work, per person and hopefully with, pay at some point. If the state changes its law with respect to that. There's no indication that cities that have 4-year terms,
Hartford, which has had 4-year terms for a long time,
I don't think.
has
that's-
had not much turnover.
It's all,
Yeah, they're back.
One site, it's only 9 members and they run every 4
My-
years.
and that is my concern with if you're adding 20, if you're going to 20.
Yeah.
And speaking specifically for my district.
Yeah.
A ton of turnover in the last 5 years. I had to replace 2 people this summer. And now you gotta find a third person to run and you have to convince them to do it for 4 years.
You don't
And-
have to find a third person to run. You don't have.
Why wouldn't you if you have a,
Sure.
why wouldn't you, if you're the party?
Because
why
you
wouldn't
could
you-
run one candidate. If you're a party, you could run one candidate or 2 candidates or 3 candidates. So
Why
the
wouldn't
party
you
is not
try to find
required to
30?
find 3 candidates.
But then that district wouldn't.
And that
Would have
district
representation.
wouldn't have the representation.
There would, presumably, there would be other candidates.
The other party can vote, is welcome to run. I mean, the other team in a baseball game can lay their bats on the ground. It's a silly proposition. You're the party that's trying to get people, the point of a party is to get people elected.
Fine. But
So you have to
again,
find the.
parties do not always run the maximum slate. They just don't.
Okay.
Okay, but in theory, John, if you are the chair of your party and you would like to run 3 people because there are 3 available seats, you now have to find 3 people to run for free for 4 years.
Well, let's put it a different way. You would have to find one more person.
You have to find one more, and and it's a challenge to find 2. It's a challenge to find a
But
replacement.
I thought we're a city of 100,000 people.
You're a district of,
16,000 come out to vote at the height.
it's 16,000
Right,
around the
exactly.
vote at the most, John, and in a district, it's a couple thousand and a couple hundred of those actively participate.
What we're trying to solve is the problem of low voter turnout in a year where we have a 4-year term for mayor, where there's no mayor on the ballot. That's what we're trying to solve.
Correct. I
And
get
so if we
that.
do it every 2 years for city council, the way it's done now, you will have that off-year election where you're gonna
We
get
have
that
no
much.
background.
Come.
I get that.
And we have no background to compare this to other cities or towns that have done this. I'm just saying, we moved forward with something that we didn't take the time to study. That's what concerned me. We didn't, look at the discussion here tonight.
yes.
Right, we didn't plow into that because we said we were gonna put it on the back burner.
Joe, did you?
I had a question for our counselor, actually. What concerns me about this discussion now, kind of to Doug's point, is that this is a really substantial change in how we structure our government. And I'm not sure we've had a robust enough discussion in this body. But my question, that's not my question. The question to you is that you are probably aware more of what are the unknowns in situations like this that we may not have considered because it's new for us. So that's my question for you, Counselor. Do you have any advice or wisdom about this proposal that we're dealing with, and what are the drawbacks and what could be the benefits?
The experience with 4-year terms is relatively new and in a lot of communities in the last decade and a half. Hartford's one of the few that's had a 4-year term for a number of years. Middletown's had it for a number of years. Some towns have 4-year terms for mayor and 2-year terms for the council. It's Hamden, although they're just going to the 4-year term for mayor, so there's no experience with it at this point. The issue that the chair raised a moment ago is a legitimate issue. I've seen in my 3 or 4 years here working in Norwalk, a lot of turnover in some of the council seats, and will you be able to assure that you get full slates of people running? And I'm not talking about Democrats or Republicans, just people running to get on the ballot, to qualify for the ballot, to remain in a seat for 4 years. That's the only issue that I have there. The other side of the coin is, I mean, I did very early on, background document number 1 laid everything out here, by the way. So, and there was a discussion that you guys had. We never had a panel come before us, but the council's gonna look at it. The council has actually looked at this issue many times. Before we formed, between the 2 commissions, I did a series of seminars with the council where we actually discussed this issue and had a panel. So whatever you send to them, they're gonna look at. They've got a period of time, most of the month of June, maybe even kicking into early July. And this would be a significant issue for them to look at. And I think many of them have done a lot of thinking about it. If they need to, I could put a panel together for them of people from different jurisdictions to discuss how the cycles have worked for them and what the unintended consequences are. I don't know what to say beyond that. It's, but the general argument and the general trend is in the direction of 4-year terms. That I can say.
And an important point is that if we don't, whatever we don't send to the city, to the common council cannot consider.
No.
That's not true.
Oh, is
No,
that-
that's not true.
Is that true?
The council can consider things at this stage. We're finishing phase 1. We send them our document.
Okay.
They now are in the recommendation phase.
Oh, okay.
So what they're gonna come back with, let's say you give them the combination that we're talking about right now. They can say, no, not 4-year for the council, 2-year for the council, or they can say a series of things. We ask you to consider this. We recommend that you eliminate the 4-year term. And then it comes back to you, and you can then only consider what they're recommending to you.
Okay, so we
And
don't
when you send
consider
it to them in the last instance, they can only vote up or down on what you send them.
in the last instance.
In the last
I got
instance,
you.
in August.
Okay.
All right, that helps.
So right now, they still have a fair amount of flexibility. They'll have an opportunity to go over this issue, and I'll talk to them early on. If you approve these 2 items, I'll talk to the president post haste and say, do you want me to organize a panel discussion to discuss this issue? Or you have other views on it and just want to deal with it? So
That makes me more comfortable with it, because of knowing that hits it to the council. And they're the body that really, needs to look at that thoroughly.
they're gonna be affected, yeah.
All right, so can we, it's getting later. Can we vote on the proposal to have a 4-year council term in 2031, beginning 2031? Jim?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Joe's a no.
Yes.
Yes, I respect the merits. I am a no.
Now,
Stay.
Also abstains, council.
Yes,
Yes.
Motion passes 4-3-2. Right?
And I think the town clerk is the only apolitical position that does not have a 4-year term. So I would propose that there could be no reason why the town clerk shouldn't have a 4-year term.
Okay.
So I would propose it.
Proposing
29 of the mayor.
2029 is the mayor.
Beginning with the mayor.
Okay. So there is a motion. There's been a motion made by Ed to have a 4-year term for the clerk. Town clerk beginning 2029. Any discussion?
I just want to throw it out there. I know that our clerk is very, very popular. But there are at least 24 towns in Connecticut that appoint the clerk rather than have an elected position. I don't know what kind of policies go into the clerk's office. But some of these positions, you know, like constables or clerk or poet laureate, you know, probably would do fine as appointed positions. But I know,
Laureate is not elected, John.
Code laureate is appointed.
right, that's kind of my point.
You put, laureate?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
No.
Rick is the.
Yes.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
I can respond to John, but I'm not opposed to having that position be appointed either, but we didn't really discuss that. I think that's for a future commission to look at.
Next
because
commission.
I think it's quite possibly would be a good thing to do, but as far as the amendment,
Can I just throw in a parenthetical? That is a trend in the smaller towns. In Stonington last year, they eliminated their elected town clerk. They're elected treasurer, they're elected assessor. Right now in Salem, the charter commission has eliminated the elected treasurer clerk as a third position. I can't recall right now. I think the board of selectmen is going to throw it back in, but the smaller towns have moved there because they're having a harder time get people to run for these positions. In the larger cities, the only city that does not have an elected town clerk, and some of the cities have two different. Bridgeport has a city clerk and a town clerk. Waterbury has a city clerk. And a
We do
town
too.
clerk. Not elected though.
Oh,
The city
that's
clerk's
right.
not
Yeah,
elected.
city clerk's appointed.
Yeah, I'm talking about they're elected in those cities. In Hartford, the city clerk is an employee of the council. Is hired by the council, and that's the only big city that does not have an elected city clerk.
Middletown has an appointed clerk.
They're
They have a city and a
they're
town.
relatively small. city.
Rick, any thoughts?
I'm gonna say.
I would
He
only,
needs an ethics clearance. field.
A
A waiver.
I would only say, having been involved with a few elections in this town, and jump in, Ed, if you want. Because you've been a party chair, I've been a party chair. I do not want the clerk to be appointed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's take a vote. We'll go down the. Jim is in favor. Joe?
I'm sorry.
If you're voting yes, you are in favor of expanding the clerk's term to 4 years beginning in 2029. Elected term of the clerk. 4 years starting in the 2029 election with the mayor.
Yes.
And that's an elected position.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm a yes.
No reflection on my good friend here, I'm the same consistently that I believe in 2 years. Sure. We can get a vote on people. No.
That's enough. Rick, you like to
I'm
abstain?
definitely abstaining. I was gonna make mine in capital letters.
John?
How did Rick vote?
He abstained.
I abstained in capital letters.
I would like to abstain in lowercase letters.
Okay, noted.
Yeah.
I'm a yes.
Yes.
As is, motion passes 6-1-2, capital and lower.
One
on the
capital.
abstain. Okay. I think that's everything. I will touch base with you, Steve, about how you're gonna incorporate some of this.
No, it's easy enough.
36 hours and there's.
Oh, you want a couple of
Yeah,
scriveners?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay, the scriveners first, that's just the word inflammable, look that up in there. You have to change it to inflammable. And then in charter has the word inflammable, which could be misinterpreted by the public, so change that to flammable and the term de novo. And if there's any other Latin terms that you find, Counselor, that the general public would not understand, I would respectfully request that you put a definition. But my other comment was the one, just with the flow. If that bears discussion now, I know it's getting late, but the idea of having before each section, like not changing anything in the chart, before each section of the charter, have just a a
Do you have
friendly
the-
explanation. of what
Right,
it is.
synopsis of it,
Sure.
yeah.
I think that's a good thing for us to
Yeah,
include in the
so-
transmittal letter as,
Okay.
a, this isn't something we voted on, this isn't something we're suggesting
If
you
it's
put.
not substantive in terms of governance.
What I've heard.
Correct, and I don't disagree with you, and I think I think we're moving that way, I would like to see us move that way to make this easier to work with, yes.
Totally.
Clarity, brevity,
Yeah.
real world application of how any of this might apply to your life, I think we can build that into the transmittal. Anything else?
Yeah, I am wondering, we have made recommendations for extending the terms of the mayor and council members, and I would like to include in that recommendation that both be included as separate referendum items.
We're not there yet.
Is that right?
Yeah. Well, because you don't know that the council's gonna approve this. So,
Right.
You know, next, in the next, understood.
What if they don't come back to us?
They have, oh,
Right, well.
if they accept, I'm telling you, you put enough stuff in here, this is coming back to you.
Okay.
My experience.
So regardless,
Yeah.
I would like to propose that we recommend both of the term extensions as.
But John, that has to come back to us.
No, it doesn't have to come back to us.
It
Yes, it does.
certainly does, John, because if the council kills it, then there's no point adding put this as a separate thing on the ballot when
If
it's
they
not gonna
change
make
this-
it to the ballot.
It would just be our recommendation. The council can do
At
whatever.
the next phase, we would do that.
There may not be a next phase.
I mean,
There,
It has to.
No, there doesn't
to
have to
No, no.
be.
Well, John,
John's correct.
think of what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
We're dealing with the charter. We don't expect the council to get it and go, that is beautiful, let's go, let's send it on its way. It's going to come back with their recommendations because they've already disagreed with us on some of the things that we've discussed. So you have to believe it's coming back.
John is legally correct. It can be accepted as the final report and they can approve it.
Has that ever happened in your?
I've never had that happen in 33 charters.
And with what's proposed,
With some of these changes.
Yeah,
It's highly unlikely.
Not gonna happen.
And can I also say, I think everybody agrees that I've heard generally with the concept that there should be separate questions. So I don't think there's any question about the record.
Then why not
If they-
simply include it in the recommendations
It's
today?
presumptuous. It's their function and we're nowhere near that point. It's just. I shouldn't.
I'm gonna leave it alone,
No, I concur.
unless you wanna vote on it, unless you're requesting a vote on that, whether that should be included.
Sure, that should be relatively simple. Yes.
John is requesting a vote that the transmittal letter include language at this stage that these three
Yes.
items
Check it. We're not done
recommending
yet.
extensions of terms. Did we recommend in our transmittal letter that these be put on as separate ballot?
Yes, that's right.
Discussion.
Yes.
Discussion,
So I just want to ask the counselor, is that ever done?
It's usually done in the last phase. And that where you respectfully request that the council consider breaking the questions up in this manner. And in fact, when you get it back, if you get it back, and I do concede that the commissioner is right that the council can accept this, but I'm just telling you based on my experience and my conversations with council members, that there are some things in here that are probably not going to get approved.
Absolutely.
And there are gonna be recommendations coming back in the next cycle. When you're meeting with them after they send it back to you with the recommendation cycle, as we're negotiating the final package. This will come up in that discussion. And I've had letters, transmittal letters in August, end of July, early August, when you're sending it back to the council for final action. That say, we would ask you to consider these three questions. Breaking it down this way, not even presuming to develop the questions, so you should have questions to deal with these three issues or something like that. Because it's their decision. So I don't think anyone's disagreeing with the commissioner's thought that there should be multiple questions. The only point I'd make is it's a little presumptuous and early in the process to do that.
Thank you for that information.
And I think the record's pretty clear.
John, wanna
I
vote?
will vote no. But I do agree with John that I think most of us do that there's a question.
I think we all are there,
Okay.
but we can vote on whether to put it in this transmittal letter at this stage, which is what John is requesting. No. Joe,
No.
Carl,
No.
I'm a no.
No,
Lowercase, yes.
Abstain, I'm just teasing.
Is that? It does not pass.
You need to approve the,
We need to vote to approve.
is there any other
Unless
motions?
there's other things people would like to add. No.
No, we have another meeting a week from today
With the council.
with council.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
Cover what?
To
Present the.
That's what we get to present and they get to throw in
So that's
no.
next Tuesday.
No, you're done.
Wednesday, I think.
Wednesday.
I think it's
At
Tuesday
6.
Or six.
It's at 6.
June 6th.
Motion to
Did they want us here? No,
Wednesday.
we have to vote on approving the.
At
or-
6 o'clock, though, right?
Oh,
Is it at 6?
Yes.
So I will make a motion. I will make a motion to approve the draft report of the charter that will be inclusive of the changes that we accepted tonight. We don't need any discussion. I don't believe it. Jim?
Yes.
Carl?
Sorry.
Yes.
We're approving the draft report. Carl's a yes?
Yes.
I'm a yes?
as
You
amended tonight.
nudge
Yes.
your
Yes.
contacts on the council side and
You know what? I don't.
No, I know that. No, I never abstained.
Yeah.
Well, that's the majority vote, but I'll just.
Yes.
Yeah. Don't agree with it.
Okay.
You
John?
agree with the majority of it?
Yes. Tanya?
I don't agree with it.
Ed?
Yes.
You good? Okay. So we're unanimous on the transmittal of the,
It's not the content.
if not.
We agree on the transmittal, but not the content.
We have a motion to adjourn.
Don't move.
No. Ed, you wanna hang on?
Can I just say for the record that the only abstention vote that was valid in this entire process was the distinguished town clerk's vote tonight?
Yes.
These abstentions are supposed to be for potential conflicts. Or
Avoiding conflict here.
So I just.
I disagree. I think it's possible to abstain if a member does not feel sufficiently informed about one way or the other.
Abstention. Well, maybe under rules here it's different, but under Robert's rules, Robert's rules is very restrictive.
So no vote was an option.
What?
So no vote was an option.
Always.
I was on.